I want to, first of all, thank you guys for participating in this. This is so helpful for inventors and those new to the process. And your story is really inspiring. I mean, and the fact that a lot of inventors get a tremendous amount of support from their family or a spouse or someone. So the fact that you guys are, and we'll kind of dive into that a little bit, like what it's like to be married and working on an idea together.
Depends on the day.
I'm sure it's got like a lot of things. It's ups and downs. But guys, here's George and Kelly Melistas. They're the inventors of Child Be Safe. And Jenny, if you want to play a short video just demonstrating the product, and then we'll start off with the story behind it. Yeah, perfect. Actually, you have a lot of videos on your website. So we just picked one that showed a traditional like socket cover and that you have, but you also have a modern style. So I'll start out with a little bit about your background. And I'll start because that's always interesting for our inventors, is to see that there oftentimes it appears to be a disconnect, but there's also a common theme behind an inventor's day job, so to speak, and what they end up launching. So Kelly, why don't you start with yours and tell us what your day job is apart from working on, in your own company.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously my most important job is mom, which is why we're here talking about this today. So George and I have a set of 7.5, almost 8-year-old twins, which helped us really kind of launch this idea. But in addition to that, I am a child and adolescent psychologist with one of our health systems here in Detroit. I've been doing this for what seems like forever, especially over the course of the last year. So I focus on kids, adolescents, young adults, their families. It really runs the gamut, dealing with kids who are struggling with anxiety, depression, attention deficit disorder. It really runs the gamut. So I'm very blessed and very fortunate to be, working for a great system and doing a job that I love, and then getting to also use some of those skills and the problem solving and helping, in different facets, also, in work, at home, and now with this invention and product.
Good. Exactly. Well, thank you, George. What about yourself?
Well, I'm a civil engineer. I practiced civil engineering for nearly 20 years. I was on the private end for a few years, and then spent the rest of my career, there were 17 years in the public sector, municipal projects, land development projects, and also review engineering. So the field that I was in, basically, I was reviewing engineering plans to make sure that they meet or exceed, our city specifications prior to, the developer putting their project under construction. So very rewarding, great career. And I left that field a couple years ago to pursue Child Be Safe with the help, of course, here with my lovely wife.
Okay, and now your Child Be Safe is your full-time occupation, right? It's like most inventors, they would say, full-time is more than what most people consider full-time. So for sure, it's taking a lot of time. Tell us, and I believe the eureka moment, Kelly, came from you, and then you guys started kind of collaborating together. So tell us what first prompted this. Take us back in time. to when George is still working as a civil engineer, and there was no child be safe at that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to think that it was so long ago and so much time has kind of gone by, but in actuality, it really wasn't either. So being a mom of twins and just a new mom in general, I think I had made, multiple trips a week to BuyBuyBaby, Babies R Us, researching products, for the kids as they were kind of growing up. And, the time came to safety proof the house. They were crawling, they were getting into things. And I remember a conversation with our pediatrician where he literally said to me, you have to get on the floor and crawl around as if you were them and look for things that you wouldn't normally see at eye level. And it really kind of stuck with me. And so when they started walking, they were probably 14, 15 months old. Fast forward a little bit to that time frame, they were fascinated with light switches, with the outlets. George had outfitted every outlet in our house with the little plastic protectors that just kind of pop right in. And it almost became like a game. I was finding them all over the house. They weren't really doing what they needed to do. And that was something that was scary to me because I had, at that same time, had stumbled across a statistic where almost 6,000 kids wind up in the emergency room every year with electric related injuries. And the thought that something that we know we're supposed to protect our kids from, but that you can't keep eyes on them every single second of every day was really scary for me. So I started looking, what else could I use? You can only move so much furniture. You can only block so many of the outlets that you're not using. And so, I said to George, I said, I'm not finding anything. And this is really, starting to concern me. And I knew that if I was thinking this, I knew that there were other moms that were thinking about this as well. And so I had this idea that, if we could just cover it all together, they didn't even know it was there, and that we were able to kind of shut out the whole system, that maybe, maybe there would be something. I wasn't able to find anything. I am not an engineer or inventor by any stretch of the imagination prior to this. This never would have been something that would have crossed my mind. But as I started to think about it a little bit more, I was able to kind of give George my idea and say, listen, you're the engineer. Here's what I'm thinking. Now fix it, figure it out. And so that was really the inception of Child Be Safe, and really kind of how we got to this point. There was something that I noticed that I needed and I, wasn't able to find. And, a lot of times, and we've heard a lot of people tell us that's when the best inventions come to fruition, is when you can't find what you need. And so you do it yourself. And this is really a testament to that for us.
So, and I'm not the best illustrator, but I'm just going to take a quick shot. As I'm a former engineer myself before becoming a patent attorney. So George, don't judge me on my drawing skills at all. But when you talk about the existing solutions, there are little plastic parts, right? Like circles that you can that you basically plug, and instead of covering the entire socket, it just covers this one part. That's what you're
Correct.
talking about. Okay, yeah. So what? So you saw. Tell us about the disadvantages with this. I mean, one, I can tell you. Have you ever stepped on one of these when they've had when you had the bottom part kind of facing up? It's not a fun feeling. This is basically a shot at what those are. You're supposed to take those, stick them in. But if they fall out and they don't, I have, I don't have twins, but my wife and I have we have 5 kids.
Oh, God.
2 of them are a year apart. So they're not twins, but I know kind of have an idea what you're dealing with. They don't really fall out. I mean, there's the kids, these are like an attractant for toddlers. They see it and there's this little bit of space behind it, just enough, maybe they can get their nails in. And they take them out like that.
Right.
This is it's like the opposite.
And for kids, it's easy. And that's exactly it, John. For kids, it's easy. They just pop their little finger behind there and they're able to, I mean, I still use, I'll be honest, when we had them, I would still use the plug from the vacuum to pull them out because I couldn't get them out. But for them,
it was for something. That's what the
exactly. And for them, it was like a 3-second, if that, it was a 3-second, feat. The biggest concern that we also had, and one of the things that we knew is those plastic protectors are things that everybody uses. There's millions of these sold every year, but they're actually a choking hazard as well. And so that was another component to it that scared me is, having one is hard enough, but having two and kind of trying to wrangle them in and making sure that there was nothing on the floor and vacuuming multiple times a day so that they couldn't get things in their mouth. And then this one thing that just was a magnet for their attention was a choking hazard. And as we started to develop this and we were talking with friends and family, and, I had one of my closest girlfriends who said to me, Kel, I never thought about this, but her son used to actually pull them out with his teeth. Like he would literally put his mouth over them and pull them out with his teeth. And so then I'm like, okay, that's just a recipe. There's so many recipes for disaster in this equation. Right. And so they were some of our biggest supporters initially, with this project, because they saw, in their own home what they were kind of dealing with. And so as our conversations progressed, it was great to get that reaction.
And John, it's the feeling of when you step on one of those things, it's worse than stepping on a Lego.
Yeah, because at least the Lego's got, we'll talk engineering, we do like more surface area for that little round peg, but here it's like a sharp little piece.
Oh yeah.
But it's, it's funny you mentioned that, like every, so different products have pros and cons, and sometimes it's the end user. And in this case, like a parent of twins are the ones that are best able to find out what the deficiency in a product is. Like they had for years, and you've probably seen them, like there's like people with walkers are cutting tennis balls open and putting tennis balls on the front two parts of the walker, or the back two legs, just because it helps cushion and it provides some grip. And the funny thing is that the engineers that are designing these are not using walkers on a daily basis. So they get the finished product. They probably, like test it around a conference room once or twice, and they say, okay, voila, it's done. But they're not taking, 100 steps, 200, 300 steps a day in them and not realizing it. So I think that's a lot of what's happening with toddler products, infant products, is that moms are like necessity is the mother of invention. Like they're finding out the first time a mom puts a regular diaper on their baby and goes to the beach and the thing disintegrates, and that triggers the idea for the swim diaper. And the same thing with like the jogging stroller. Like you can't jog with a regular stroller, and the designers are looking at, okay, the stroller is for strolling. Like they're kind of like looking at it with blinders on.
Right.
And sometimes it takes someone actually in the field to step on one, for example, or see their toddler with I can't even, the thought of that is frightening. Like with their mouth directly on the socket, trying to pull the thing out to find where the downside is. And it's a similar product that comes to mind that, not to say you guys are old, but you're old enough to know of this product. Like years ago, the way you would open a soda can is there would be this metallic tab that you would pull out. And I think still maybe V8 still have some. There's still some products that have them. But once you separate it, what do you do with it? People, a lot of times they're thrown away, and people get their feet cut at the beach. Toddlers swallow them until an inventor came along with the push-in tab, and they were from outside the industry, like not even in the bottling industry. That brings me to the next question. Is that something that what you believe was an obstacle to you, or was it a fear you had? Like, who am I to present a new product? I'm not a product developer, a product designer. I'm not from within the industry. How could I possibly come up with an idea that a mature industry has not thought of? Like, did these things cross your mind, or were they obstacles?
Absolutely. I think, initially, like I said, this was not, I never in a million years would have thought that I would have invented something, let alone, when George and I would talk about things. We used to joke like, oh, we should invent something, but then it's like one of those conversations. I think for me personally, the scariest, or more kind of foreboding piece was just this idea of, we don't know anything about this. Like, where do we even start? And that was the scary part. And then obviously, Jen, firsthand, this is not a necessarily cost saving opportunity. Like this is a big process from start to finish. And so it was a little daunting for us to, find our patent attorney and kind of feel like we had somebody that understood where we were coming from and kind of saw our vision, but was able to help us and guide us in the best way possible. I think with that being said, we were very blessed in the fact that we fell into the right hands along the start of this process and really got that information to help us guide. We were able to go through the process of researching first to make sure that, something like this didn't already exist and that we weren't potentially infringing on, another patent that was already out there. So it was really a step-by-step process. We did a lot of learning along the way. I think there were definitely times, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, but definitely times where we were like, what are we doing? What have we gotten ourselves into? But it was a learning process, just like with anything. And we just, we knew when we had to pace ourselves and when we had to slow down and when we had to seek additional, sources for questions and answers, because it is daunting. And you want to believe that, everyone who's there to help you is telling you what's in your best interest. And this is what we should do. But again, we funded this all on our own. And so that was a big piece for us of, we want to be safe with it. Yes, we want this to be big and we want this to be in homes because we've been able to see the difference that it's made, but just, kind of learning when to pace ourselves and when to be like, this sounds, if it sounds too good to be true, it might be. So there was a lot of learning along the process.
And you said something interesting. You said this is not it's not a quick way to supplement your income. It's not like you can use the royalty payments to help fund the patenting expenses or the prototyping expenses. It's completely the other way around. There's a lot of spending before you ever see the first penny come back. So for any of our viewers that are looking and saying, well, you know what, like if you're, this pandemic has, caused you to have fewer hours or had your job lost, and you're thinking, well, invent something to get me through until the pandemic's over. Unfortunately, the tough reality of inventing is that this pandemic is likely going to be well over before any returns from your invention start coming in. And that's just the tough reality. I mean, even Jeff Bezos of Amazon, 14 years of losses before Amazon ever turned a profit. And, so that's, and that's not, I'm not saying to anyone that it's going to take 14 years, but it's certainly not a get rich quick scheme that is going to yield results right away. There is going to be a tough road ahead. I want to jump ahead just a little bit, George, to your, because that's always interesting, that point where you quit a full-time day job to pursue this dream. And that's not an easy decision by any means. When I started my practice and left Fish and Eve, a large law firm, to go out on my own, it was the same thing. It's like, gosh, how am I going to get my first clients? How am I even going to make it past the first month, much less the year? Tell us about that decision, and I'm sure there's a lot of collaboration between the two of you on when to do it, whether to do it. To talk to us about that.
Well, during my last 3 years of being, I was a city engineering manager for the city right next door to the town that we live. And the opportunity had come up for me to be placed into the director of economic development for the city. At the time, we had just started thinking about, well, we just heard about, what was going on with possible, pandemic in China. It's making its way, into the United States. So it was, for me, it was going to be a lot of travel. Didn't quite feel comfortable with the travel that would be done. And, it was pretty much a take it or leave it type of deal. I would have to leave my engineering position to do that. They thought that I would serve the city even better if I went into that role. I wasn't quite interested in that position. And so we had a great talk with Kelly. Literally, it happened on a Friday. I came home, and of course, I have a lovely and supporting wife. I'm so glad that she supported me with my decisions every step of the way of our marriage. And this was just another true, supporting system for me to let go of that and take Child Be Safe and get it running. So I mean, our company was founded in early 15, but by the time we got our hands on the patents, it took almost 3 years to get patents. We have 2 utility patents that have been issued to us. One of them is for a 2-button, the other one is for a 3-button unit. And so as soon as we got all that, we were in the process of finding a manufacturer, because at the time we're like, okay, we got the patents. Do we just hold on to them? Do we sell them off? Do we open a company up? What do we do?
Right.
And so we decided that we wanted to make a difference in not only children's and pets' lives, okay, but also give parents peace of mind. This was our way of being able to give back, because here in the state of Michigan, in 2008, we went through a really, really bad recession. Of course, this is a heavily, industrial state. We've got the big 3 here, and there's a lot of companies that feed off of the big 3. So with what we did, we were able to, collaborate and team up with local companies to make this thing, come to fruition. So it's really cool. There's, 3 companies that pretty much have livelihood off of this invention of ours, from the company that makes, and this is one of our units, that makes these springs, to the company, of course, that makes the actual shell of our units, to even down to the screw that we purchase for the units that are included with every one of the items that we sell. And we struck a deal. Being a small business person, it's really hard to even get into one of these manufacturing facilities for them to give you the opportunity, because unless you're one of the big 3 that can show millions and millions of dollars of work that you'll bring them, nobody will give you the shot to make this happen. So we were fortunate that we found a local manufacturing facility to help us with this, and they've been great to work with. They've been around for 50 years. A&D Plastics, family owned, and they gave us our big shot. So then we built our website and started selling.
All your manufacturing is right there in Michigan.
Correct. And we actually hand assemble our units in-house. We hand assemble them, because we wanted to, of course, save money to be able to, pay off the debts that we had to get this thing going. And we still, there's clips here, and then there's springs, of course. So we hand assemble all this, and then we test every single one of them. We clean them up again and make sure before they're packaged, and boom, locks. You've got 3-button system. No kid has that kind of dexterity where they're able to push all 3 buttons and open up the unit, whereas an adult does. Same thing with pets, so it's really cool. We've manufactured them also for switches, the traditional switch, and also for modern switches and modern outlets, which this one serves a dual purpose. And we also make them, in ivory and also in white. So, these are great. People love them, neurodiverse families, grandparents, nannies. It's really cool that they're buying them to protect, their fireplace switches, garbage disposal switches that control, computer equipment, sensitive electronic equipment. So there's a lot of purposes that these units serve that are, really making a difference in everyone's lives. And we're proud to be able to give back.
Yeah, and that's that's got to be a marvelous feeling. Like what would you, we've talked a little bit about some of the obstacles, but tell us about some of the big wins. And it might not be, like going back to Jeff Bezos' example, I remember seeing an interview once where they asked him what was one of the his most happiest, I guess, occasions with Amazon, and you would think it would be something huge, like, you know what, when we bought 350 Whole Food stores or whatever. But his answer was surprising. He said, you know, the day that I was able to hire somebody and not do my own delivery to the post office. It was like that
was a conversation we just had with George the other day.
So it wasn't like this huge multinational acquisition or something that really was it. It was like, you know what? I don't have to load up my truck and go down to the post office with these boxes of books. At that time, it was just books. So tell us about yours. What were some points where you had this feeling of, okay, you know what, we made the right decision and we're glad we did this?
Oh my gosh, I think there's so many, Jen, honestly. I think the biggest thing for us is being able to see something that we're so passionate about come to fruition, right? To come from an idea of George and my father-in-law creating a prototype in the basement of wood sticks and pieces and whatever, and now to have this, I think is monumental for us. Obviously, knowing that the product makes a difference in people's lives, the reviews that we've gotten, you know, as a mom, this was like, okay, this is going to solve a problem, right? This was one situation that I ran into. But to also see that we were able to expand it to switches, and, you know, we had one of the kids' friends, the mom and I were talking a while ago, and she was like, this is the best thing ever. They had a switch in the family room that controlled the TV. Husband was working from home. And, you know, the kids thought it was fun to like, oh, daddy walked away. Let's go turn off the switch. And then everything powered down. So just being able to hear that people have found it as useful and as easy. And it's one less thing they have to worry about. You know, George mentioned it earlier, obviously, as a psychologist, hearing the reviews, the great words from neurodiverse families, you know, patients who, you know, not patients, but, you know, parents who have, you know, kids that have autism, you know, or ASD related, you know, autism spectrum disorders, other disabilities where, you know, there were struggles with, you know, keeping them away from things, and just the peace of mind that this gives to parents that they don't have to worry about certain things has been great. I think the fact that it's given us an opportunity to teach our kids, you know, real life lessons in the flesh, right, in vivo, of like just doing this stuff, and to also see them get excited about it. You know, they love hearing that there's an order that just came in, and, you know, Dimitri, our son, will ask George, okay, Dad, what did they order? What do I need to go get? And he knows where everything is downstairs. He'll bring it upstairs and help George, you know, package it. They take turns taking it to the mailbox. So the fact that this has really become a family affair and they're proud of it, I mean, I get emotional thinking about it, even at 7, is huge for us.
Do you have the original, you don't have to show them now, but the original prototypes, because there's so many incredibly successful inventors, like Sarah Blakely comes to mind, and she has her original pair of pantyhose, like
that she cut up,
that she cut the toes off of to make her first prototype. Like, when you have those and you see where things had started, and they even started well before then. It started just with an idea, right?
Yeah.
Like before it became a drawing on paper, and then to see it on, you know, become an actual product, and then see people write in with their reviews and how it's helped them. And I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, it's so, I feel blessed to be able to speak to you guys and work with inventors, that many of them are doing the same thing and they're following this journey. Let me ask one question that's been like bugging me, and that's I just find one of the ingenious aspects of your idea is that you don't need keys or a combination, because, you know, you can forget a combination, you can lose the keys, and now you've got a lock over your your socket. Where did the idea for using dexterity that an adult is able to do but a child cannot, like, which one of you came up with that? That's George is taking credit for it. So.
That was George.
Okay. That's just that was just beautiful. I mean, what I saw and that aspect, I don't know, like we have, I mean, there's so many times with like even we have a lock on our door here at the office. It's a combination, and invariably somebody will like, you know, like forget the combination, and they're here in the morning and would call somebody else, and that's fine. For obviously we don't want just dexterity to be the way somebody can get into our office, but because there's not kids trying to get in, there's not toddlers or infants. But you guys have really identified, honed in on the difference of your product and what the end user is. And that dexterity aspect is perfect for it, because it makes it simpler for the adults, because they don't have to remember anything, carry around anything. There's no separate part that can get lost and then the whole product is obsolete. It's all there. It's all one piece. Well, the hinge.
So, John, this is the funny thing. You know, have you seen, I'm sure you've seen, you know, where they put those little locks on like liquor cabinets and also the kitchen cabinets and what have you, where you actually have to push it and it releases from the inside in order for the door to open.
Yep.
So we had them on our liquor cabinet here. And of course, one wasn't enough, because of course, as soon as they saw us do it, they would go there, our kids would go there and open it up. So I'm like, okay, well, I got to outsmart them. So what I did next is I put a lock up top and the lock at the bottom of the door. Well, that only lasted about a month. What they were doing is they're like, okay, we'll fix you. Dimitri our son was taking the top one, unhooking it, and then our daughter Evie was pushing the bottom one, and then boom, the door would open again.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what do I do next? I'm like, okay, I'll add a third button right on the actual door. So I put one up top, one in the middle, one at the bottom. And that, to this day, I mean, they're 7 years old now, they can't open it up. So when we first started talking about this, I'm like, okay, we have to come up with some sort of locking mechanism. And I started, you know, designing, doing different layouts and how we're going to make this thing work. We designed it literally 10 different ways. And, you know, our patent covers those 10 different ways. So nobody, of course, takes our idea. And I took 2 straws. I'm sitting went to my parents' house. My dad, you know, he was, when he came to the United States from Greece, he worked for a factory. So, you know, he was a foreman there, very mechanically inclined. Mind you now, he's only got a 6th grade education. And, you know, I'm telling him about the idea that I have. And he's like, well, you know, you got all this competition. Are you sure you want to go through with this? How are you going to do it? So I had taken 2 straws with me, you know, and I'm like, okay, well, how can I get the straws to go up and down? And I found this little spring. I dropped the spring inside the straw, well, between the 2 straws, made the one smaller. And then I was able to get, you know, a push button type of thing. And the first prototype that we had made, it was actually 1 cylinder all the way down. And then you would press this and it was just 1 spring, and it had you know, the up and down action. But, you know, getting that into production or manufacturing, because that cylinder is a special cylinder, it would cost a lot of money to put this thing together. So that's when we started designing, you know, we're sitting in the patent attorney's office and he's like, George, you know, I know you want to patent something with the 2 buttons. I'm sure we can get it patented, he says, but we need something more. I'll never forget it. It was a Friday. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He's like, what else can we do? And I throw the idea. I'm like, what about adding a 3rd button? He's like, a 3rd button? What do you mean? I said, well, he goes, where would you put it? I said, well, what about here? And he's like, well, show me. And he goes, how would you open it? I said, well, you would just put your finger here, put your thumb at the bottom, put your middle finger at the top, and then your, you know, pointer finger, your index finger, push it here, and then push all 3 buttons in sync, and bam, it opens up. And he's like, wow, novel idea. I go, you could even add a 4th button. But then, you know, you start getting to the point where as you start adding all these buttons and springs and what have you, and you're making it in the USA, you know, you have to be careful with what you're doing, because you want to not only be able to sell it at a price someone will pay for it, but also you want to turn, you know, some sort of profit in the end. So we found the common denominator of a 3-button unit to work great. And this is, we call this a child-proof device. All the other stuff that you see on the market, John, is more resistant. Everything is pretty much defeatable. And that's where what we have is very unique in the baby safety market. And we're getting a lot of praise. So it's pretty cool.
One more thing too, just to kind of piggyback that sentiment, I think the other nice thing about it is it also serves the out of sight, out of mind purpose, right? So by covering the outlet in its entirety when it's not in use, the likelihood, they're going to go up to it, they're going to look at it, they're going to realize they can't do anything with it, and then they move on. And it's really the last time we've seen any fuss with it. So it really is that out of sight, out of mind, mindset for them too, kind of like peekaboo. If they can't see it, it's not there. So that was another added benefit to doing it.
It's not like the attractant, right? Like if you see it, then you want to, it's more likely that you want to try to access it or
of course,
whatever.
And what we had done, John, is we made it in white, of course, because a lot of the outlets, people love that whatever effect they have on the wall and the white to match the trim and what have you. The reason why I went with white, but then you have the houses that have the natural decor and the colors that they select. And we found that the ivory color or almond color, blends in, very well. We've made custom ones for clients that are, light gray. There's people that are asking for them in black, so the possibilities are endless, of course. Another thing with our unit was, and you know about this, John, being an engineer, it's got a living hinge. This right here, of course, it's all molded together, and we had to find the right blend, the right mixture of, the plastics in order to make this thing as durable as possible. And even a guy, my size, you yank on it, you pull it, this thing does not break. And of course, kids with the strength that they have too, hanging on it and what have you, all that played a role to try to make this as of high quality and extreme durability as possible.
Okay, and it's actually been used, I've been reading on, like daycare centers have ordered some, churches have ordered some. Is that, that's got to be like schools as well? Like that's got to be a phenomenal feeling as well, because sometimes at the early stages when an inventor has an idea, there's this doubt of, what, am I oversensitive? Is this something that that I'm overly concerned about, but there's not others that share this view? And Kelly, from the sounds of it, you didn't really have those doubts. You seem to be pretty confident that, what, there's a need out there, and obviously you were right. But when you have daycares and schools and churches purchasing, that's really confirmation that this is that you really come onto something that's got a real need in the marketplace.
Absolutely. It's, I think it was one of those things, like you said, John, where I just, I realized that, like I've said before, if this was something I was thinking, I'm sure there was somebody else, who was thinking, and we've all done it, right? We've all walked through, whether it's BuyBuyBaby or a hardware store, we've all walked through and found that one product and thought, oh my God, where was this when I needed it? And so that was part of, the process. And again, there's parents, and we've heard, great things, but, we've also heard that the plastic things are cheaper and they're perfectly fine for, for where I need it. And that's okay. This may not be something that, just like anything else. But I think when we, our first instance in getting into the schools was just an interesting story in the sense that our kids were in preschool when they were 4. And probably about a year and a half after they were out of preschool and started kindergarten, I bumped into the director of their preschool at a Made in Michigan festival that George and I had done. And she's like, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, we have this product. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so she came over and she saw it and she said, Kel, this is fantastic. And she said, let's plan a day to talk. I'd really like to put these in the preschool. And I said, okay. So we had met and we talked, and some of the issues that they were running into were exactly what we talked about. Those plastic little outlet things were, being taken out by kids, or, their custodians in the program and in the church would take them out to vacuum or to do like housekeeping related things. And then they'd go and unplug the vacuum, but they would forget to put the plastic things back in. So this really was something that she's like, I think this would benefit. So we were fortunate enough to be, able to work with them, and we outfitted every preschool classroom in the building, as well as some of their other classroom type offices that they had. As this started to grow and as we started to, kind of expand into more daycares, into schools, we had COVID. And that really kind of forced us to need to kind of pivot, just like everybody did, because schools weren't in session and, people weren't taking their kids to daycare. And so, as things pick up again, we continue to have that plan, and we'll continue to work with these partnerships that we've made. But yeah, that's really been the icing on the cake, is, exactly what you said. Like, this was something we thought we saw the benefit in it, and hope that others would. And so as this continues to grow and as we get the additional feedback, it just solidifies that.
Yeah, no, love it. It's both of you guys are so inspiring. I'm glad you're able to make it. We typically cut these at exactly a half hour, but I've gone over because you're just such a source, such a wealth of information for inventors. Jenny, if you want to type into the chat the website for if somebody wants to order, childbesafe.com. And if there's any parting words of advice, I'll start with you, Kelly, and then George, for any inventors that are at the stages you were at when you first decided to launch.
Yeah. I think the most important, I've said this, numerous times, I think the most important thing is to just be patient. That can be difficult, especially when you know that you have this idea and George mentioned it earlier, the patent process itself was 3 years. So just be patient and really take the time to enjoy each phase of where you're at in this. We're blessed to have been able to do this together, and to, which comes with the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I think it's really been an eye-opening experience in terms of just patience and learning, and really just being able to appreciate it for what it is, good, bad, and different.
Okay, perfect. George?
Boy, John, I mean, where do we start? There's the whole process itself is just an amazing process. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be setbacks, but you got to believe in yourself as much as you believe in your product. And of course, support of each other. I mean, if spouses are doing this together, it's a lot of support, a lot of sacrifices that you're going to have to make as a family, not being able to, buy that new vehicle. I had a vehicle that I drove almost 215,000 miles. I just let go of it last year, to save that money and put it into our company, into inventory and what have you. So, I wouldn't, there's nothing that I would change along this journey. Getting onto big commerce spaces, Amazon.com, Amazon Canada, we're in Walmart Canada, Etsy, eBay, our own website. We just struck a big deal with Google Guru, which is huge in the baby space. It's really rewarding. And there's other companies that want us too, some big hardware store companies. And, at the same time, we want to be careful with the steps that we take. We don't want to get too big and things get out of control to the point where you can't handle them, either. So these are good problems. But I urge everyone who has a great idea, do your homework, make sure there's nothing out there, build a prototype, take into account, how much it weighs. Another big thing, for shipping is a big thing.
Yeah.
And what it costs to ship a product. Our products weigh just a little over 3 ounces a piece. So, I mean, I could, ship them via USPS first class mail and put 4 of them and they're still under a pound. So that's another big thing is, especially when you've decided to make a product here in the United States, you have to look at all the factors that play a role in order to price it right, in order to be able to turn a profit, and in order to keep your company moving in the right direction. So there's a lot of factors, and don't be discouraged. Don't let anybody ever come and tell you that your product is no good. Don't waste your time. This and that. The sky is the limit. and we're living proof of that, John. So it's, follow your dreams. I gave up my 6-figure job to go and follow this wonderful, opportunity and journey that was brought to us. And reading the comments that you see, on Amazon and on the Walmarts of the world and what have you, and even our website, the feedback of, Etsy, another big one where we were able to make a difference in this lady's life because her cat loved to play with a switch that controlled the garbage disposal. And, just reading those things that we were able to make it, or the lady that in the middle of the night, who before she bought our product, when she went to go change her baby's diaper, she was unscrewing the light bulb in her ceiling because the one kid loved to constantly play with the switch. And in order to get some sleep, she was unscrewing the light bulb. And her youngest baby was sleeping in that very same room. So every time she had to go in there to check up on her baby or, change the diaper of the baby in the middle of the night, she would have to screw the light bulb back in. And she found our product and put it on there, and it completely changed her life. Wow. Those comments alone to us, it's like winning the lottery. I wouldn't change it for the world. So
that's what
it's a great feeling.
Inspiration you guys are. We're definitely going to have you back, and I'd love to have an episode just on the good, bad, and ugly of working with your spouse and bringing a product to market. Just that one aspect could be a whole
absolutely.
So with that, I do think we have to end, but I really want to thank you for giving so freely of your time.
Thanks, John. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your time, John. This has all been great. If there's any questions that you have or the audience has, we can answer them if you wish, however you want to handle it.
Perfect. We're going to have, we'll put links on our private Facebook group, the Inventors Mastermind. And Jenny, if you want to put that in the chat as well. And then Jenny will get in touch with you to figure out how to, maybe we can have, if you're interested, maybe a separate Q&A for inventors. We'll take all of that. I see the chat link is there. But terrific. Thank you so much for joining.